Right, well, it is 3:30. Let's make a start. We've got lots of people joining us today. Really excited to launch today's Norfolk Water Fund business case, and we are delighted with the interest that we've had already. And for very much thank you for your attendance today. My name is Daniel Johns. I'm the Managing Director of Water Resources East, and I'm delighted to be chairing today's session on behalf of our core partners, Norfolk County Council, Anglian Water and the Nature Conservancy. To briefly introduce Water Resources East, we're the independent not-for-profit membership organisation tasked by government to create a long-term water resources plan for the Eastern England region. But our vision is wider. And we want the region to be seen as an international exemplar of collaborative, integrated water management. And the Norfolk Water Strategy Programme is our flagship project to deliver better and more integrated water management in the county by scaling up nature-based solutions. Today's webinar will set out the business case for increasing investment in nature in Norfolk to address the county's water scarcity challenges. Water security challenges, water scarcity, water quality and flood risk management. And in doing so, deliver and achieve co-benefits for biodiversity, for carbon storage, for communities and for the local economy. And the business case documents are now live on Water Resources East's website. So Alice, if you could perhaps post a link to the Norfolk Water Strategy Programme page on our website just into the chat, and then people can start to take a look at that. So moving to the agenda. We've got a packed agenda today. Delighted we've got so many speakers to take part in today's launch event. So first you'll hear from Michael Weiss from the Nature for Water facility and members of the team that developed the business case from Rob, from Jack, from Thomas and Hannah. And just also to note that Lola Grumman was also a key member of the core team. We'll also hear from several of our partners who are leading the way in funding and delivering a nature-based solution projects in Norfolk, Jonah, Glenn and then Kate. And we'll get to a panel session where we'll invite Robin, Ed, Glenn, Wendy and Lucy to discuss the importance of today's launch and the case to scale up investment in nature from their points of view. And finally, we'll try to leave as much time as possible for questions from the audience. And just in terms of housekeeping, as I said at the very beginning, please make sure that your microphones are off and also your cameras are switched off too, just to preserve bandwidth for everybody. We've got two ways of communicating during the event. The Teams chat function should really only be used for kind of technical problems and queries, which Alice and Kirsty will be checking out. So if you can't hear, if you can't kind of access anything, then please just drop a note into the chat and they'll try and help you from behind the scenes. But we'll be using Teams Q&A function today. So at any point during the webinar event, please use the Q&A function to ask any questions of our panelists and any of our speakers, and we'll leave, say, as much time as possible toward the end for a Q&A session. Other people can also upvote some questions. So if you click on the thumbs up icon, you can make questions. Obviously, if and I will pick in chairing that Q&A session. I'll pick from the most popular questions that people are voting for. And finally, just to flag that this session is being recorded, as we always do with our webinars. WRE will be publishing both the recording of the webinar and also the slide deck. So there's no need to take notes and screenshots as you go along, and we'll get that onto our website as soon as we possibly can. So without further ado, let's get on with today's launch event. First of all, I want to pass to Michael Weiss, from the Nature for Water facility, and to Rob Cunningham from the Nature Conservancy to first introduce themselves and to set the scene for the Norfolk Water Fund business case. So over to you, Mike.
Thank you so much, Daniel. All right, good afternoon, good evening, good morning to some of you. It's wonderful to be on this particular launch. My name is Michael Weiss. I am one of the directors of the Nature for Water facility. We are a technical assistance facility, and as Daniel said, we've been integral to supporting the development of this business case. So I wanted to start by saying that what we've developed in our terminology is a watershed investment program. We're calling this particular launch function the Norfolk Water Fund. But the watershed investment program terminology is what we use as a means to address water challenges globally. And the water challenges we address tend to be around water security, which is specifically related, as Daniel said, to the availability of water quality and quantity that we rely on. And we've seen threats across the board We do not focus on the symptoms of the water challenges we see. Instead, we go upstream, we go to the source of those problems, we go to the root of the problem, and those tend to be endemic across catchments that produce that bulk water that we rely on. We believe in nature-based solutions because we think that nature-based solutions are an acceptable way and means of responding to water security challenges, because what nature-based solutions tend to be a landscape approach to dealing to particular problems we see across the landscape, problems that are produced from multiple users of that landscape. The Nature for Water facility is one of the partners. We are a partnership between the Nature Conservancy, and I've got my colleague Rob on the call, and a management consultancy called Pegasus. We have experience as a partnership working across 30 watershed investment programs. This will be the fourth or fifth water fund that we've collectively launched together with our partners at the Nature Conservancy, and we are a blended international team with multidisciplinary skills. And as I said, we develop what we call watershed investment programs, and the concept is fairly straightforward. We require water downstream, we require water of a certain quality and quantity, and we believe that water originates upstream in those key catchments, which are usually under threat. We also believe that there are critical ecosystem services that we receive downstream and in those catchments upstream, and it's important to protect those ecosystems, sometimes to restore those ecosystems so that we can continue to receive those ecosystem services, among other things. This is roughly the 35th watershed investment program that we've been developing with our partners, and it is fit for purpose, we believe, in Norfolk. So there isn't a single watershed investment program globally that we've been part of developing that is a copy and paste. Ultimately, we focus in on the problem that we've got at hand in Norfolk, which our team will go through, and a solution with the partners. We come together and we term that collective action. And so I'd like to now hand over to my colleague Rob, who will further talk to where this particular water fund concept originated from.
Hi everyone, thanks Mike. So my name's Rob Cunningham. I'm the Resilient Watersheds Programme Director at the Nature Conservancy in Europe. And just to reinforce the kind of international interest in this, so the Norfolk Water Strategy Programme leading to this business plan launch is one of the Nature Conservancy's 13 global flagship projects. So it's one that we talk about in all of our international literature and talking to donors. And our work here is generously supported by the Enterprise Mobility Foundation from the US. So there's a huge amount of international interest in this work, which is sometimes hard to believe. Especially I grew up in Norfolk, and sometimes looking at our work alongside the other engagements we have in places like the Rio Grande or the Amazon Basin, it's really impressive. So, I mean, that might beg the question, why Norfolk? And why did we land here in Europe, the Europe team land here? And I guess if you know Norfolk, that's not such a hard question to answer. I mean, from a biodiversity perspective, you have globally scarce chalk streams. You've got the fantastic broadland landscape with its incredibly rich biodiverse interests, that mixture of lakes and rivers and wetlands. But also it's facing an awful lot of pressures, and whilst the pressures are not perhaps unique, they are particularly acute in Norfolk. So we've got the fastest growing population in England. We do have incredibly rich and valuable farming systems, very important to the local economy, but that does put pressure in terms of water quality and water use. And in terms of, it's a very dry county, and climate change is going to be felt particularly acutely in this part of the world. And so in terms of the kind of response to that, we're seeing restrictions being placed on abstraction, and that's putting pressure under public water supply, on agriculture and industrial users. We've seen the threat of water quality from population growth impacting wildlife sites, and that leading to the imposition of nutrient neutrality. And in the recent weeks, it's really reinforced the level of flood risk, and we're seeing an awful lot of land underwater and increasingly properties at risk and being impacted. And so it's kind of with that recognition of the unique habitats and the pressures that we came together with our core partners that Daniel's kind of already introduced, and came up with this idea of a Norfolk Water Strategy Programme. And I'm not going to go through all of the objectives that you can go back to, but I think key ones for me are ensuring that water isn't a barrier to economic growth, so really trying to address those issues. I think there's also a really positive spin on this as well. There's so much, we've got great partners both within the partnership, but also in terms of delivery that we'll see later. So Norfolk's a real hotbed of expertise and developing interest in nature-based solutions. So there's a lot of opportunity to grow the green economy there. And also we've got brilliant partners in terms of the groups like the University of East Anglia and other research academic interests. So we really want to take the learning from Norfolk, roll that out into other engagements, both in England, in Europe, and indeed globally. Part of that kind of cutting edge work here in Norfolk has been around the modelling. So I'll hand you over to Jack, who's done the interesting things.
Yeah, thank you very much, Rob. Hello, everybody. I'm Jack Beard, and I work for the Nature Water Facility as a science technical lead. So what that means in the context of this work with the Norfolk Water Strategy Programme is doing a lot of work around building an evidence base for the impact that nature-based solutions can have on a variety of water-related outcomes that we'd like to see in these catchments. So what I'm going to take you through here quickly is some of the results, some of the key outputs from this process. So first of all, I think Rob's already covered this quite a lot, but just to, the key message around the scale of the challenges being that Norfolk faces multiple intersecting challenges relating to water. And that's only being exacerbated by changing climate, by increasing population pressures, economic growth in the region, all of these different things. And so they're manifested in a few key ways. When we talk about the water quality problem, just worth drawing our attention again to the fact that there's very limited water bodies across the county that are currently at good status in terms of water quality. And in terms of water quantity, we've looked a lot at issues of decreasing groundwater levels, abstraction of water from aquifers, which has led to increasing multiple pressures from different sectors on relatively modest water resources. Norfolk is one of the driest counties in the UK. And all of these things that intersect with these key habitats that Rob was talking about. So especially the Broads wetland areas, the River Wensum, which is a key special area of conservation, a chalk stream fed by an aquifer. And the key message for us as a programme is that we think that nature can be a highly effective solution to address these multiple water-related challenges, whilst also delivering on multiple benefits in terms of biodiversity, in terms of recreation and well-being for the county, and also delivering really high-quality habitats. So what we try to do as a programme is target interventions that we think can have an impact on these key outcomes. So when we're talking about water quantity, we're talking about interventions that can increase the sponge functioning of the landscape, increase the connection between surface water and groundwater. And when we're talking about water quality, that's really about decreasing mobilization of pollutants and buffering water courses. And yeah, the amazing thing about nature-based solutions is that they have the potential to deliver against these multiple benefits, also high quality habitats, increasing biodiversity. So in terms of the work that we've done, one of the key work streams here was working out, if we want these solutions to have the highest impact, then we need to make sure that we're siting them in the right places in the landscape. So we need to put the right things in the right place to ensure the maximum impact and to ensure that you're not excessively taking land and just siting things correctly. So we focused on 4 key catchments, namely the Wensum, the Aire, the Bure and the Ant. And with partners at the Environment Agency and JBA, a mapping exercise was carried out to look at where different nature-based solutions fit well in those landscapes. And what that's given us is a really good top-down look at the total opportunity across these areas for implementation of different solutions. And what that feeds into is then we can do impact modeling around what's going to be the impact on key water-related outcomes. But another really nice thing that's come out of this is through working with partners who are implementing projects like Norfolk Rivers Trust, we found that this can also be really useful on the project level, finding out what sort of features might fit into a specific project with a specific landowner, that kind of thing. And the second piece of work that's been really important for us is working out what kind of combinations of nature-based solutions can have a maximum impact. So how can we put these things together to ensure that we have the maximum impact across our multiple objectives, those objectives being increasing biodiversity, reducing the mobilization of nutrients, and increasing recharge to groundwater. So what we did was use quite simple tools. We modeled the implementation of interventions like leaky ponds, planting in river corridors, soil management strategies, targeted land use change. And what this piece of work found was that there's key trade-offs between different objectives. So the best solution, for example, for water quality might not necessarily be the most optimal for water quantity. So we found that often a mixed portfolio of nature-based solutions, so doing multiple things in multiple places across the landscape, has the best outcome for those multiple objectives that we were looking at. So this is all fed into the business case, which Thomas is going to present, and the creation of a portfolio that we think is realistic. I guess in summary of this work, we are facing challenges. Norfolk faces challenges, especially around water, but that nature has the huge potential to provide solutions to these challenges, and we can really maximize the impact that nature and nature-based solutions can have through putting the right things in the right places and in the right combination. So thank you very much, and I'm going to hand it over to Thomas now.
Thank you very much, Jack. So, yeah, I'm Thomas Curtis. I work with the Nature for Water facility, and I've been in charge of developing the economic and financial part of this business case. And before we dive in, I want to say that we won't have time to get into all the details that you might want to, that you might be looking for. So I encourage you to go and have a look at the detailed report that we published, and that is available on WRE's website. I also want to thank Lola Grudman from the Nature for Water facility, who has been supporting in building this business case, especially with the costing and funding strategy. And I don't want to spoil the fun, the surprise, but the short answer to this question, is it a good investment, is definitely yes. It is absolutely, it absolutely makes sense to invest in nature-based solution for Norfolk. For this business case, we wanted to create a tool that could be useful for decision makers, potential funders, and also landowners. And so we've focused on two things. First, an economic cost-benefit analysis, which, as the name suggests, compares costs of a portfolio of nature-based solutions. For example, all the implementation and maintenance costs, but also importantly, the potential losses in revenues by landowners. So comparing those costs to potential benefits. And we have focused on four things: the reduction in nutrient pollution, the increase in water availability, climate regulation and improved air quality, and unlocking housing development. We have also performed a financial analysis which strictly focuses on transaction costs and revenues. So comparing the design, management, implementation, monitoring costs of the portfolio of nature-based solutions, and comparing those costs to revenues from the sale of nutrient neutrality offsets and also from biodiversity net gain units. I can't go into all the assumptions behind this business case, The key message here is that we've used the best information available and data sets available. We've used natural England calculators for nutrient neutrality and BNG. We've commissioned Mott MacDonald to set up a nature-based solution cost database. We have adapted the water industry environment program option appraisal methodology, and we've consulted with numerous local stakeholders to validate these assumptions. The portfolio we wanted to model, to model a portfolio that would be both realistic in size, but generates also large impact in the catchment. So we wanted it to reflect medium-term funding opportunities and also account for long-term maintenance and monitoring obligations imposed by the nutrient neutrality and BNG environmental markets, and that's 125 years and 30 years respectively. So quite a long time and quite a financial burden on project. So this translates into a £30 million portfolio that allows for the implementation of almost 600 hectares of nature-based solutions. Included in that are 200 runoff attenuation features. And this portfolio, importantly, has a large impact in on the catchment downstream, influencing almost 26,000 hectares. So our work clearly demonstrates that nature-based solutions are a highly cost-effective way to tackle some of Norfolk's most pressing challenges. Each pound invested in nature yields almost £7 in benefits. And you have key figures here. Greater water availability, 3.7 million cubic meter per year of additional water available in the landscape. Improved air quality and climate with almost 11 million worth of CO2 capture and removal of microparticles. Improved water quality through the removal of significant amounts of phosphorus and nitrogen, and also unlocking housing in a sustainable way. But maybe as important, this business case does not include the significant opportunity to create through nature-based solutions, green jobs, generate social and well-being co-benefits, and also a multiple other set of benefits that can't maybe be monetized. In this graph, you can see that even without unlocking housing development, benefits in terms of water quality, water quantity, climate regulation, and air quality more than outweighed the total cost of the portfolio, which really speaks to the relevance of this program. In terms of financial benefit, we found that the portfolio showcases very good performance with a revenue to cost ratio of 1.5 and a net present value of almost £15 million. But here I have to point out that the scalability of this performance will be limited by the size of the nutrient neutrality and BNG markets in Norfolk. So as demand is satisfied, opportunities to generate revenues will decrease. So in conclusion, we think it is a very exciting time for Norfolk, and we do believe that now is the opportunity to create collective action mechanisms centered on NBS to tackle Norfolk's most pressing challenges. We've shown that NBS are a highly effective way to tackle these challenges, and today is really a call to invest in nature and establish a Norfolk Water Fund to secure Norfolk's water security for its people, for its economy, and for the environment. And with that, I'll hand over to Hannah, who is going to talk about the next steps.
Hi everyone, my name is Hannah Gray and I'm Programme Manager for Nature-Based Solutions at Water Resources East, and I'm just going to briefly talk you through some of the next steps for the programme. So as we've heard today, it's the launch of the business case after 2 years of hard work and preparation from the team. But over the next 12 to 18 months, we'll be looking to grow and scale this Norfolk Water Fund. We're seeking to grow the portfolio of pilot projects to demonstrate how nature-based solutions for water on the ground in Norfolk can work, and with a particular focus on monitoring to gather evidence of their effectiveness on the ground. We'll also be looking to finalise the governance and the structure of how the Norfolk Fund will work. And then the aim after this kind of next period of work is to have the fund set up with a pipeline of scoped projects that are ready to align with delivery mechanisms that you'll hear more about, but such as the advanced WINEP programs, local nature recovery strategy, and other things like the landscape recovery projects. So what can you do if you want to find out more? Perhaps you're listening today, you may be a farmer or a landowner interested in exploring some of these nature-based solutions on your land. Maybe you're here as a funder looking to invest in nature-based solutions for water in Norfolk. Perhaps you work for an organisation who can help us as a group of partners to deliver these solutions in Norfolk. Or maybe something else entirely, you just want to find out more. So please do get in touch. The best way to do that is to email this address here, nwsp@wre.org.uk. And just another plug to go to our webpage to download the full business case and summary prospectus if you haven't got time to read the full report. Thank you.
That's brilliant, Hannah. Thank you so much, the whole team, for getting us to this stage to be able to pull the business case together and to make such a compelling case to increase investment in nature in Norfolk. What I want to do now, Hannah, if you could just reshare the slides very briefly, is widen the discussion. You're building on that theme that Hannah just introduced about the next 12 to 18 months being about growing and scaling the investment in nature in Norfolk. There are already lots of exciting projects underway. And we've invited a couple of speakers from our kind of key delivery organisations and partners to just talk through some projects from their point of view. If I just kind of skip to the right slide. This is all about building the project pipeline. So we've got Jonah from the Norfolk Rivers Trust. We've got Glenn from Swallowtail Consulting, who led the Wendling Beck Environment Project. And we've got Kate Trumper from Anglian Water. So if I could ask just all three, actually, let's just turn to Jonah first of all. Jonah, I can see you. Jonah, unmute yourself, and then if you take control of the slides and then take us away. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Daniel. I hope you can see me and hear me. Or hear me at least. I know you can't see me very well.
Yeah, it's all good. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. So I'm here to talk about building a pipeline of delivering these projects. Hannah actually just described very well what Norfolk Rivers Trust is. We're an organisation that is here to help people deliver these kind of solutions in Norfolk. Word for word, that's pretty much what we do. So can you all see that as full screen? I'm only seeing the slides and oh yeah, okay. Yeah, so I think the first thing I want to do is tell you what it is that we deliver, a little bit of the history about what we're doing, the benefits that we get from it, and I think importantly as well, the evolution of how these projects are funded. So what you can see on the screen there is one of my very first projects at Norfolk Rivers Trust from nearly 11 years ago now. Actually, this is a new bit of river at Bayfield, and I love it, and it's great, but it illustrates the way that we used to do these projects. So it's focused very much about the river. That bit of river you can see on the left wasn't there. There was a brickwork tunnel, and we built a new river, and the habitat in the river is great. It's really good. But what it doesn't do that we would now consider is it doesn't really connect to the floodplain. It's not delivering much in terms of carbon storage. Biodiversity benefits are very good. Not much in terms of flood attenuation or drought mitigation either. And it was a very simple funding stream, and that's why we've picked out this project to show you. This was funded purely by one Environment Agency grant, and that was it. So a very good project, did exactly what we wanted it to do, but we've now moved on to much wider and much more complicated things. As you can see now, hopefully. So the next one is one of our most recent projects that I know a few of you have seen, certainly. This is the River Stiffkey between Warham and Whiten, and this project has come directly from several years of building a whole pipeline of projects. And what we've done here is pretty much as ambitious as we know how to be at this point in time, actually. So we've reconnected the river to the floodplain here. We've connected lots of old meandering channels with wholly new bits of channels, and we've gone for as many ecosystem services as we can get out of this. So as you see it at the moment, it's pretty much completely underwater. There's a lot of aquifer recharge going on, protecting the river against drought, probably later in the year. There's a lot of flood mitigation going on. There are 2 communities at risk immediately downstream of here. Previously, all that water would have raced towards them. There will hopefully be a lot of carbon sequestration going on. That's one of the key things that we want to understand. How much are we doing for carbon sequestration with these projects? We're re-wetting a lot of peat here, so we hope it's going to be fairly dramatic, but that's still to be measured. And the biodiversity benefits are already appearing just a few months in. It's already become a hotspot for wintering birds. So it's doing really well. This was built on the back of 10 years of planning for the River Stiffkey. And this isn't unique. We wrote a series of catchment plans between 8 and 11 years ago, I think, outlining what we'd like to do to 9 different Norfolk chalk streams. And on Stiffkey, I think we're about halfway through doing that. It shows which way conservation finance is moving, I think. So it was funded in large part by Anglian Water, but the original inception grant came from the Rivers Trust 12 years ago. It was the very first Norfolk Rivers Trust grant. And we've also had development money from the Environment Agency. So 3 funding sources in there. Fairly conventional, I would say, compared to some of the other stuff that we've moved on to, but an evolving world and complexity of funding. The next examples are constructed wetlands. Again, these have come out of catchment plans that we wrote years and years ago, and we've still got tens of sites of these in Norfolk that we would like to do. And same story actually. So we started fairly simply at the Northwest wetland, funded entirely by the Environment Agency. We then built Inglesthorpe with Anglian Water, funded entirely by Anglian Water. And we started to look at the multiple benefits. So it's built to remove ammonia and phosphorus from water recycling works effluent, which it does very well. Also, it locks up a lot of carbon. The biodiversity benefits are massive. For us, that was a big part of it. We wanted to put back some of Norfolk's lost wetlands. And it's doing a whole lot of other things too. More recently, we built Langham, which you can see on the left there. And again, the funding's getting more complex. So Langham's been funded by a whole variety of people. Anglian Water have helped with the practicalities of connecting to the sewage works. Again, it was in that Stiffkey plan written 11 years ago or so. And we've had bits of funding from 2 different Environment Agency grants, and also a big chunk of funding from World Wildlife Fund coming from Finish, who make the dishwasher tablets. So increasing benefits and increasing funding complexity. We've heard about runoff attenuation features a little bit today. This is a massive one, and this is at Spall in the headwaters of the River Nar. You can see how much water that's holding. That's completely dry in summer. There's not a drop of water to be seen for most of the year, but when it rains, it does that. Previously, that water was all racing down one single ditch. It was flooding the road. It was causing massive soil loss into the River Nar, a triple SI chalk stream. So we're trying to hold the flow there, slow the flow. It's a runoff attenuation feature, but also a whole lot of biodiversity benefits that you can hopefully see there. This was funded by ASDA and the Environment Agency and a couple of other sources. And finally, I believe we have some work we've done at Fulsham, second to finally, actually. Again, showing that the diversity and complexity of habitat we're trying to create. The picture on the left is pre-works, the picture on the right is immediately post-works. And again, we've made that out of a single tiny little ditch that has again become chalk stream headwaters, wetland habitat, thriving, multiple funding sources, multiple benefits. And finally, one that's been part funded by Water Resources East. This is some work we're part way through. This one's not quite delivered yet. This is sort of mid reaches of the River Yare, kind of mid Norfolk to South Norfolk, I guess. And again, it's a before and after picture. You can see the old, very ecologically boring and visually boring straightened river channel on the left before we touched it. And you can see where we're going with it on the right, meandering channels, wetlands all around, re-wetting that ground, really trying to hold water, really trying to store carbon, really trying to deliver biodiversity benefits. We've got a whole load of these in the pipeline, and we started building these projects 12 years ago when we were new. But what we're finding is that we're finding increasingly interesting and increasingly complex ways of funding them. We're finding that the landowners are wanting more reward for this stuff. A lot of this land had no value even 3 years ago. But with nutrient neutrality and BNG, every little corner's worth something. So that's a whole new part of the negotiation. So yeah, that's what we're trying to do, and these are the kind of projects we're trying to build into the pipeline.
Brilliant, thank you very much. And we've got Ed joining us for the panel discussion later on, but let's move straight on. So Glenn Anderson, if you want to turn your camera on, take control, and tell us about the kind of landscape scale projects that you've been working on, including the Wendling Beck. Glenn?
Yeah, thank you, Daniel, and thank you, Jonah. Great presentation. So my name is Glenn Anderson. I'm just going to give you a quick rundown of the Wendling Beck. So again, another project looking at creating nature-based solutions in Norfolk and trying to monetize that from a landowner perspective. So Wendling is a collaboration. It's made up of 4 farmer landowners. We also have Norfolk County Council and Norfolk Wildlife Trust as landowner partners in the project. And then we're supported by a range of different organisations and NGOs, including the Nature Conservancy, who we've been working really closely with from the start. So the project is kind of bang in the middle of Norfolk. You can see the map on the right-hand side, shows you us within a Norfolk context, and then the map on the left just shows you where we are within Breckland, which is our local planning authority. And you can see that the kind of the corridors on there, the purples and the greens, are part of the green infrastructure strategy. So that's you know, if you go back 4 years when we started this as with more of a kind of a farmer hat on, we had no idea about where we sat in the context of the landscape. But as we've sort of developed this project, that's been a kind of a learning curve for us. So this was the project 3.5 years ago. The map shows a kind of an arable landscape with the Wendling Beck River running through the centre, which is the green corridor through the middle there. And you can just about make out Derham Water Recycling Centre right down in the south. The river actually flows from south to north in here. And the map on the left-hand side actually shows a UK HAB. So that's the UK habitat classification of what that land is being used for. So the orange on there is intensive arable. So I can't see my my little screens to move on to. So this is where we're heading to. So you can see that the landscape over time becomes a much wilder landscape. It's not a rewilding project. It's kind of managed conservation with kind of intended outcomes. And you can really see that the map in the top left-hand corner there has changed to a mix of different colours. The yellows on there are grasslands. We've got a heath, lowland heath, floodplain wetland mosaic, various different connective kind of woodland corridors and kind of scrub habitats. So really trying to build on these Lawton principles to deliver nature at scale. The overall site is a couple of thousand acres. And we really feel that we kind of need to deliver nature at that kind of scale to get the economies of scale that we need, but also kind of enable those natural processes to work effectively. So we've been working with DEFRA for the last 4 years as part of Biodiversity Net Gain development. We're actually one of their pilot projects and a part of the statutory credit scheme as well. So we will be selling units both to the local area for developers and infrastructure, but also back to central government as part of that pilot policy. And we did a baselining in May 21. We've done about 200 acres on the ground out of the 2,000 spading groundworks, and we continue to do that year on year. So we've done another 30 or 40 acres recently, which are kind of just in transition. But we're also looking at other ecosystem services in there as well. So nutrient neutrality being a big one in this region. Looking at sort of various different possibilities for nutrient mitigation. Really land out of production. We've got a septic tank replacement
strategy that we're looking at across the project, which is replacing about 25 tanks, riparian buffers, and we're looking at wetlands and natural flood management and floodplain restoration for that as well. We're also looking at carbon. We're not expecting to monetize the carbon benefit for this project, partly due to some of the stacking rules that we've got. But we really want to understand what that carbon benefit is for wider society benefit, but also just trying to understand if you do something for nature through one of these methodologies like biodiversity net gain, what is the carbon benefit of that, so we can kind of report that back within our systems as well. So just a few pictures of what we've done on the ground. This is really looking at, in the top left-hand corner, some of the lowland meadow creation. You can see that some of the wetland cars there in the middle, the historic kind of landscape lends itself to this kind of land use. We're also on really light land, so it's not the most productive land. I don't think we're losing a huge amount of production out of this as well. We're using a seed mix from up at Sandringham, so one of the tenant farmers at Sandringham who has a very high quality grassland there, hand collected seed, local provenance, really trying to get the best quality in there at the outset, so that becomes our donor site in the future. And we're also looking at various areas of river restoration, so we've been working closely with Norfolk Rivers Trust on that. We've got one scheme delivered and 3 more designed, which we'll be rolling out over the next couple of years. We've done about 600 metres of river restoration in a similar kind of vein to what Jonah was just showing us. And as I say, we've got about 250 acres under management at the moment, with various different habitat types in there. We're also looking at providing better social improvements and public access. So this is a cycle path that went through in partnership with Norfolk County Council last summer. So this was part of the Platinum Jubilee funding, and that's created a high quality cycle path surface, which actually links Durham Marketplace with Greston Hall Museum now as well. So I think it's the first time that we've had a kind of an all ability access route through the project, and we're seeing that quite heavily used. And then just looking at some of the kind of the wetland areas as well. So these are actually Norfolk Wildlife Trust's British whites managing some of the wet grassland in there as well. So again, collaboration between projects and project partners as well. So as part of this work, we've also started looking to collaborate with other landowners and help them in this process. And this map actually shows a kind of a wider Norfolk and Eastern region context. There's a number of landscape recovery projects in here. So we started a small consulting company about 18 months ago called Swallowtail. We're actually working on about 500,000 acres of project at the moment, split between about 10 different projects, most of them in the Eastern region. We have got a couple a bit further afield. But you can see in here the kind of the concentric circles are showing where there's opportunities and existing projects within the landscape. So a number of round 1 and round 2 landscape recovery projects, and some emerging round 3 projects in there as well. And we are partnering with Water Resources East on a project just south of Norwich called Crown Point, where we're looking at a number of nature-based solutions as well, particularly for biodiversity net gain and nutrient mitigation within there. And just thinking around the kind of the finance opportunities around that. So Thomas sort of explained a little bit about this, but just trying to break that down as to how that works within a kind of a project context. And we really see that there's sort of various different buckets where this finance is flowing from. So institutional investment. So you'll be familiar with some of the organisations in here. These are just examples. There's loads more in there. But also compliance markets, which is things like biodiversity net gain. So some of the kind of the infrastructure and the housing. Looking at supply chain resilience and environmental social governance, and new policies like TNFD that are coming through as well. Credit platforms, so various credit platforms emerging at the moment, things like Soil Association Exchange and Replanet, where we can start to use land differently and monetize that process for either carbon or biodiversity benefit. And then grants and philanthropy still making up a part of that puzzle, and kind of blending all of this together. So that's me. I'll hand over to the next speaker.
Brilliant, Glenn, thank you very much. And I think we'll be talking about the funding picture. And I personally, I find that kind of hexagon that you just showed really fascinating, really interesting, because I guess the theory is there's no shortage of funding out there, but it's becoming increasingly complicated to kind of tap into it. There's lots of funding from different sources. And one of the things we're trying to do through the Norfolk Water Fund is to kind of aggregate opportunities, to aggregate sources of funding, and to use that as a means by which we can scale investment overall. But I think that's a really neat link now to Kate Trumpet, just to kind of wrap up this kind of session, looking at different examples where we're making progress. Kate, you're going to be talking about the Advanced WINEP programme, so over to you.
Great. Hope you can all hear me, and it's lovely to be here. We've been a partner and a sponsor of this work from the inception, and we are really delighted and excited about the kind of the progress that's made and the potential for the future. Let me just go forward to my slides. I'm going to talk a bit differently to Jonah and Glenn. I'm going to just give you an overview of our environment programme. Some of you be familiar with water companies' environment work, and some of you weren't. And then I want to do a bit of a deep dive into how we want to do things differently going ahead. So that's our Advanced WINEP, and I'll come on to explain what that is. So just as a bit of background, we're a purpose-led company. So our ultimate objective is environmental and social prosperity, and we've got these 4 long-term ambitions, kind of 2050 ambitions, that are overarching the rest of the work we do, which is around resilience to the risk of drought and flood, delivering with others sustainable significant improvements in our catchments, becoming a carbon neutral business, and enabling sustainable economic and housing growth. And all of those things, for all of those things, the Norfolk Water Fund is going to be really important. Delving into the improving our catchments, most of you, I think, will be familiar with the Water Framework Directive, good ecological status, and the reasons for not achieving that good ecological status, or RNAGs. And we want to clear those out so that we're no longer a reason why water bodies are not in good ecological status. We're not the only sector that prevents that, but we want to make sure that we aren't in the way. And the 2, I guess, major impacts for us are putting nutrients into water bodies and taking too much nutrients out. So we've got a very significant programme over the next 5 years and beyond of really cutting the amount of phosphorus that comes out of our water recycling centres, our works, into water bodies, and also taking less water out of vulnerable chalk streams and others. This just gives you a scale of the level of environmental investment that we're looking at. This is the WINEP, which is the Water Industry National Environment Programme. This is really the programme of measures that we agree with the Environment Agency and others. Don't be too fixated on the numbers. This is our business plan, which is currently under review. But just to give you a sense of the size of the programme, over £1 billion across our whole region over the years to 2030. So it's a big, ambitious programme, and it's looking to deliver really significant environmental improvement. And rather like Jonah, we've learned a lot kind of through the years of working with others and talking to our customers about the way they want us to deliver environmental improvements. And we're now in a position where we really want to take a nature first approach. We've worked with Norfolk Rivers Trust and Glen and others to deliver treatment wetlands, so we know that they work, we know that they're really effective. We've worked to deliver rain gardens in more urban areas, so we're kind of confident about those, and we've got a long history of catchment management. And now's the time where we really want to ramp up that experience and deliver much more of our environmental outcomes in a nature-based way. And the only way that we can do that is by working with partners, because largely these interventions are not things that we can deliver alone. They're not things that we can deliver on our estate, which is rather small. These are things that we're going to have to be working with people to bring forward. So that brings me on to our Advanced WINEP, and apologies for the kind of incomprehensible name. This really came about because I think the water sector as a whole, including the regulators, had an ambition that that massive water company investment in the environment should deliver wider environmental outcomes as well. So as well as the sort of what it says on the tin of reducing nutrients or reducing abstraction or whatever it is, there's a sense that that money could be better spent and deliver outcomes, not just biodiversity, amenity, carbon, greater nutrient reduction, skills building, all kinds of things. And our proposal is that the way to deliver those wider environmental benefits is to do so with partners. There's no one has a kind of infinite pot of money, but if we work together, both in kind of planning, delivery, and funding, then we can deliver much more for the same or individual amount of investment. So our proposal in particular is to look at a particular part of our region. So that's so Norfolk and through the Lark into the Camanilius around catchment regeneration. We're also working in Southend and Great Yarmouth on sustainable urban drainage. And our commitment, kind of what we've set out to do, is deliver all our statutory obligations as you would expect and as we would normally do, but really look how we can go further and deliver more for the environment, and particularly how we can work with partners to co-fund projects. And that's really why the Norfolk Water Fund is so crucial for us, because it identifies the kinds of projects that deliver benefits that a wide range of potential funders are interested in, and it helps us identify where's the best place for those projects to go ahead, and helps us identify who we might be able to work in partnership with. So looking at what the differences might be, so if we think about kind of catchment regeneration that we might be interested in our sort of old way of thinking, we might be looking at removing nutrients at our large work. So quite a technological approach, a really significant reduction in nutrient removal, but focus just on the effluent from our works. We also look at improving sort of river water quality and habitat restoration, but we think we can do more, where we can deliver nutrient reductions through the kinds of catchments approaches that Jack and others were talking earlier on, improve some of the smaller water bodies that tend not to feature in our investment plans, because they're kind of too far upstream, but we know that they're really important. And we want to incentivise nature-based solutions that we deliver with our partners. And I think, as I said before, that kind of gives us the opportunity for biodiversity net gain, for green skills, for volunteering, for amenity, for all kinds of benefits that wouldn't come through a more traditional approach. The last thing I wanted to mention and draw your attention to is one of the challenges that the Norfolk Water Fund's alluded to is identifying where the project pipeline is going to come from, who is willing to be involved, which farmers and landowners are interested, which potential funders are interested, how do those groups of people come together and understand each other's needs. And we've been working with WRE and the Rivers Trust through the catchment-based approach to come up with a planning hub. The link is on the slide, which gives a map, and I encourage you to look at it because it's best to play with it rather than to describe. It gives you a map of potential opportunities, both where there's potential projects and also where there's a sort of potential need for those projects, which means I hope that in tandem with the fund, this will give us a really exciting way to accelerate investment in nature-based solutions and delivering a better and wider set of environmental outcomes. And that's, I'll hand back to Daniel, because I think we're going to go to panel now. Thank you.
Brilliant, Kate, thank you very much. I was just typing busily the link to the planning hub into the chat so people can take a look at that. But thank you very much for all of our speakers. Really exciting projects getting underway, and it's a real potential, I think, through the Advanced WINET programme. And hopefully we get a fair win from Ofwat and the Environment Agency when we hear about draft determinations on Anglian Water's business plan in just a couple of months' time. If I could bring even more voices into the conversation now, particularly to bring in our other core partners and funders, backers, and invite to turn on your cameras, please. So first of all, Dr. Robin Price from Anglian Water. We've got Ed Bramham-Jones, Chief Executive of the Norfolk Rivers Trust. Glenn is going to join us again for this panel discussion. But Wendy Brooks, Head of Environment at Norfolk County Council, and Lucy Lee, our UK Chief Advisor at WWF. I wanted to give people who haven't had a chance to speak just a couple of minutes, first of all, to introduce themselves properly, and particularly just to kind of reflect, first of all, on that question about, the importance of nature and investing in nature in Norfolk. And perhaps, Robin, could I turn to you first?
Yeah, thank you very much indeed. So, Robin Price, I'm the Director of Quality and Environment at Anglian Water, and I was there on the very first day with my friend Steve Moncaster meeting Sophie Tremolay for the Nature Conservancy. So it's just so exciting to see kind of where we've got to with the Norfolk Water Fund. So congratulations to all involved. Kate's just said everything I was going to say. I think all my notes were well prepared. I think Kate has covered everything beautifully in terms of kind of why nature-based solutions for Anglian Water. I mean, we are not going to play our role in making the East of England resilient to the risk of drought and flooding, to bring ecological improvements to catchments, to be a carbon neutral business, or to enable sustainable growth, unless we use nature-based solutions. This is an absolute kind of no-brainer for us. We've seen those pictures of those beautiful wetlands on the back end of three of our water recycling centres or sewage works. And again, we could quite easily have gone with we could have built some tanks, we could have imported some chemicals from the other side of the world, we could have had some tankers driving in and out of those sites through rural villages to our heart's content kind of thing. But the work we've done, kind of working with this fabulous array of partners, in particular Norfolk Rivers Trust in this part of the world, has really given us the confidence as an organisation that investing in nature-based solutions, works as well as those concrete tanks, the chemicals, the tankers, and everything, but also delivers much wider benefits. I mean, Jonah mentioned this. Some of the stuff, some of the research through the University of East Anglia, through Warwick University. Looking at antimicrobial resistance, microplastics removal, forever chemicals removal, the wider, you don't get that with the tanks and the chemicals kind of thing. So those wider benefits, and that's even before we think about amenity value, the opportunity around health and well-being and social prescribing. So this is just a no-brainer, and I'm just beyond excited that we've really sought to take a nature-first approach to the development of our we have a £9 billion investment programme sat with Ofwat, our economic regulator, right now, which well over £1 million is directly going to be spent on environmental protection, restoration and enhancement. So we stand ready to be an anchor funder. We are happy to go first, put our money on a table somewhere. Really excited to see the next stage of the governance. We will put our money on a table somewhere and invite you all, invite the world to join us in terms of kind of co-investing in nature in this beautiful county. So that's we are here. So why NBS? There we are. Why Norfolk? Well, I seem to be spending most of my days. Ed Bramham-Jones and I were very wet in Norfolk. We spent the entire day getting very wet in Norfolk last Thursday. The week before that, I got very wet. So there's plenty of water right now in Norfolk. But we all know that in a couple of months' time, it ain't going to be there kind of thing, and we're going to be into drought, and the climate is going to continue. So building that resilience to the shocks and stresses of climate change and delivering water security benefits through the implementation of nature-based solutions, we are fully committed, and as I say, stand ready to put our money on a table somewhere and use it wisely. Thank you very much, Daniel.
That's brilliant, Robin. Thank you so much. And that role as an anchor funder is so important, because someone needs to move first. Someone needs to put some money on the table, and as soon as there's some, then others will be crowding in other sources of funding too. And I'll turn to Lucy from WWF as well in a few minutes' time. But first of all, Hello? Ed, so if I could turn to you first, Ed, just to talk about, what's the Norfolk Rivers Trust strategy here? We've got some very exciting projects, but from your point of view, as well as obviously introducing yourself, but so where do you see the Norfolk Water Fund? How does it help the Norfolk Rivers Trust? What's your strategy for taking things forward?
Yeah, thanks, Daniel. Yeah, I think we see it as incredibly important to really take forward all of the great work that's already kind of happening within the county, but to the next level, and that is really looking at a kind of catchment and landscape scale. you know, we've been planning for quite a few years. There's a lot of huge amount of opportunities out there. Great partnerships being developed, and collaboration and partnership is going to be absolutely key for this. I think having a long-term fund is so important. One, to build confidence, and especially with landowners. You know, if we're talking here of land management change, we're talking of potentially, you know, taking bits of land out of production, or of changing practices. You know, long-term support, and that's financial support, but also having, you know, the data and evidence there to support it. It is really important going forward. I think having clarity as well, and direction, and I think certainly we're starting to see some more of that, and with projects and initiatives like landscape recovery coming on board, we're now starting to really develop the systems and actually the mechanisms to be able to bring in and look at that private finance and the legal you know, mechanisms around that. So we're incredibly excited. I think, you know, we need to be doing things, you know, bigger, better, certainly more joined up. And we've started to see with the fantastic projects places like Wendling and on the River Stiffkey, where, you know, we start to get buy-in from, you know, multiple landowners, communities, NGOs. You really then start to build this much bigger, you know, piece, which is offering so many benefits, if that's from, you know, flood alleviation to community engagement. And you know, there's still a huge space here as well for farming. You know, this is really about putting the right thing in the right place. So we're incredibly excited, and certainly looking forward to you know, some amazing things happening within the landscape.
Yeah, fantastic. I think, you know, going back to that land take question, as Jack's presentation so clearly showed, you can deliver a huge area of benefits with very small direct interventions, the right scheme in the right place, delivering much wider value. So this isn't a question of, you know, taking much land out of production. We're using land for its best purpose, which serves much wider benefit, and therefore sustaining kind of productive agriculture by making sure that those natural processes are restored within catchments in those key locations. Glenn, you've already had a chance to speak, so I was going to skip over to you if that's all right, and turn to Wendy. So Wendy Brooks, Head of Environment at Norfolk County Council. Just wanted to ask you, obviously from your perspective, what's your interest clearly in improving the environment in Norfolk? It's quite an easy question for you.
I hope that's an easy question as being head of the Environment Service at Norfolk County Council. Well, I think you've already heard that actually Norfolk has incredible biodiversity, but much of that is reliant on water, both in terms of quantity and quality. And Norfolk County Council has a climate change strategy for Norfolk, and absolutely fundamental to that strategy is that we need to make space for nature to recover and grow. So I think that within that, it's really essential that improving Norfolk's resilience to climate change means actually delivering more of these nature-based solutions, both for the sake of biodiversity, but for the sake of our communities to become more resilient, and also for our economy to become more resilient, because we can't continue to grow unless we have great in which people can live, as well as the water that people need for the day-to-day lives, and I suppose industry needs as well. What I want to say is that come on to the local nature recovery strategy. So this is something that Norfolk and Suffolk Nature Recovery Partnership is leading to support nature recovery within Norfolk and Suffolk. And I think today's launch of the business case and the case to invest in nature is going to be critical to the delivery of that strategy. So the strategy is due to be completed by summer 2025. And I think today has shown that we really need collective action. You know, the local nature recovery strategy is just a strategy, and the important thing is we're able to deliver that strategy. So having new investment in nature-based solutions and nature recovery is going to be critical to the delivery of that strategy once it's completed. And I think this work shows us a really positive cost benefit of of the case of investing in nature, and that's going to help us all because it's going to give us more water, it's going to support new housing, communities and growth in Norfolk. So I'm really excited about today, and I think it's critical to nature recovery in Norfolk. So thanks, Daniel.
Superb, Wendy. Thank you very much. And turning to Lucy, so we should first of all thank WWF for being a very generous partner and funder of the Norfolk Water Strategy Programme, and also through the relationships you have with leading businesses, funding some of the projects that we've heard about this afternoon. So Lucy, so from your perspective, why Norfolk and why nature-based solutions? What are you excited about in terms of the Norfolk Water Fund?
Yeah, so thank you. I'm Lucy. I head up our UK programme of work at WWF, and I think most people probably aren't aware that WWF is active actually in the UK. We don't own land, so we don't operate in the same way as other NGOs. We very much kind of support delivery partners and other stakeholders working in places and actually draw the evidence from those programs to feed into our engagement with business and financial institutions, but also help shape and underpin our policy and advocacy asks to influence policy legislation and regulation to make sure that we've got an enabling environment. So we selected Norfolk as a key area that we wanted to focus about 10 years ago. So we had a freshwater focused programme at that stage, and lots of the reasons that kind of Rob mentioned at the start, the fact that, you know, unique chalk stream habitats, the area's really significant in terms of food production, and that directly links into food retailer and brand supply chains, and that they had identified the area as a hotspot of water risk within those supply chains. So the fact that there are multiple companies sourcing from an area kind of really provides that incentive for collective action to address a lot of those challenges. So yeah, we see freshwater as really important, that key kind of connector across the landscape, and you know what happens on the land affecting freshwater quality and quantity. We're increasingly looking at the kind of integration across land, freshwater and the coast, so upstream water quality affecting coastal restoration opportunities as well. So we really feel that the kind of the next step in that collective action is looking at the current sort of siloed investment streams, both from a public perspective, so investment in elms, kind of public subsidies, the landscape recovery, the local nature recovery strategy, but how you can kind of bring those different public streams together to focus on the landscape scale outcomes you want to achieve from a nature perspective, from a climate perspective, and for people, but also the private investment that can be crowded in alongside that. So we really feel that projects such as this water fund are really essential pieces of the puzzle, looking at what financing is needed to transition a landscape. What are the trade-offs and synergies? How do you minimize the trade-offs and maximize and make sure that the investment is the most cost-efficient way to deliver the multiple social and environmental outcomes that you need to? And I think that development of a pipeline of kind of projects that's been mentioned as well, that can really be aggregated and then be used at the scale to unlock some of the more significant funding streams, so the kind of impact investors that are really going to be needed to plug some of the investment gap if we are going to transition whole landscapes to be more regenerative.
Indeed, and we've heard a lot in recent months about obviously biodiversity getting going, a lot about nutrient neutrality. But are you hearing kind of from your partners and potential funders, interest in water resources, water scarcity projects, and nature-based solutions, which can say help with groundwater infiltration, can help support base flows and environmental improvements from that perspective, Lucy?
Yeah, definitely. I think water risk is definitely rising up companies' agendas, particularly those that are heavily reliant on fresh water, so kind of food brands and retailers. And I think it's a good introduction into how environmental risks can manifest for a company and impact supply chain resilience, and a good way to show the importance of not just interventions at farm scale, that you really need that landscape scale focus, and that's the scale at which, if you invest in a coordinated way, is going to deliver that future resilience. So yeah, I definitely think it's a key way for companies to engage, and I think really positive that the freshwater science-based targets are starting to gain traction, because that will really kind of help to steer what those context-based targets are like, and a sort of suitable level of investment into those landscape scale projects by companies.
Yeah. No, absolutely, that's brilliant. So we've heard from funders. You know, there's funding out there. We've heard from Ed and Norfolk Rivers Trust and delivery organisations building capacity, able to deliver these projects. We've got clear commitments from in terms of objectives, the direction of travel, and being a kind of, you know, that kind of core funder, both from Anglian Water, from Norfolk County Council. But of course, we also have to work in close partnership with landowners. You know, it's their land. It's the, you know, it's the farm. It's the food production. It's about the economic development and, you know, diversifying income streams. I was going to turn back to Glenn just before we open up to more kind of wider Q&A. Glenn, just, you know, talk from a landowning perspective. So how can we make sure we've got the incentives right for landowners? We're engaging landowners in the right way. That we are developing projects ground up to look at ways in which land could be changed for the benefit of the wider community and the wider catchment.
Yeah, so I think there's quite a lot of confusion out there at the moment amongst landowners. I think we've got a whole host of new policies coming through. We're obviously losing the cap and the basic payment, and we've got the kind of introduction of ELM through sustainable farming incentive and then landscape recovery as well. So lots going on within that whole area, and I think, you know, government can maybe do more around some of the certainty and clarity, particularly around some of the tax issues, and maybe some long-term thinking around some of these policies as well. So, you know, we're being asked to commit land to nature, whether it's through kind of environmental stewardship or some of the more kind of ambitious schemes, and some of those are really long term. So landscape recovery, sort of 20+ year agreements. Some of the new SFI options are 20-year agreements. Biodiversity net gain, 30-year agreement. Nutrient neutrality, sort of 80 to 125 years. So the very, very long term thinking, and that isn't always reflected within policy thinking. So you know, we tend to get policies that are kind of driven through 5-year election cycles, and I think that there could be a bit more coming back, maybe to give us a little bit more assurance going into these schemes. But you know, there's lots going on, not just in terms of the policy sphere, but also just in the wider kind of environment, and climate change is a big part of that as well. So as farmers, we're more exposed to that than probably any other industry in terms of, you know, we see it firsthand, but the effect that has on our crops and trying to grow things. So and the nature of farming is very high pressure, so it's very difficult for a farmer to kind of sit back and think, well, I'm kind of going to reinvent my business model, because you're in that production cycle as you're going through that process. So you don't get a chance to just stop and kind of reflect and think, well, actually, I'm going to do it like this, or I'm going to do it like that, because you've got this constant kind of hamster wheel of production happening whilst you're going through that process. And I think there probably could be more support for smoothing that transition for land use as well. So as we need to think about maybe using land differently, I always talk about you know, land historically has always performed sort of various different functions. So growing food is obviously a key part of that, but it does lots of other things as well. So at the moment, we've got lots of energy being produced either through solar panels or biocrops. We've got development pressures. We're now looking at kind of addressing climate change and biodiversity loss and lots of other things within that mix as well. So the pressure on land becomes more and more. We need to find ways to be more efficient in being able to deliver all of those things through the land holding. And farmers are in a really good place to be able to take advantage of that to some extent. So, you know, we don't think there's anything wrong with trying to monetize this. It's all part of land use, and there's a lot of money tied up in land as well. So you have to repay that capital value. That's no different from any other industry. But I think historically farmers have always been squeezed. They've always been squeezed by the supply chain, and kind of at the farm gate or at the bottom of the pile. So I think this is an opportunity for people to diversify a little bit and build resilience both financially and environmentally.
Yep. Fantastic. Thank you very much. Well, time is flying as it always does on these events. Perhaps if I can ask, first of all, the North Water Strategy Programme team just to turn their cameras off. Panelists, please stay exactly where you are, because I may be kind of flurrying questions to you too. But in the backgrounds are more than 150 audience members have been asking questions in the chat and also in the Q&A. It's going to be impossible to cover them all the next kind of 10 to 15 minutes that we've got left, but will field a couple already. So actually, to Wendy, first of all, Vitti Danino asks about the Iron Age hill fort that Jonah presented in his. So I think is it called Wareham? It's the Wareham Iron Age hill fort that overlooks the Stiff Key catchment. But the question really is, how can we make sure that we are making the most of the kind of social well-being, kind of green prescribing benefits that through the local nature recovery strategy, through this investment in nature? Is that part of the Norfolk Water Strategy? Sorry, the Norfolk County Council kind of objectives around this?
Yeah, so myself and Suffolk County Council have been really clear that whilst the local nature recovery strategy is to show where nature recovery is a priority across our counties, as we've talked about today, it's all the other benefits that can be derived from that, and we're really clear that we've got to maximise those benefits. So where can we improve local access? And that links to active travel choices. Where can we link deprived communities to nature? Where do the people not have that access to nature? And I think the County Council is uniquely placed to provide those sort of linkages and those new accesses. I know, for example, we've provided some new access across the Wendling Beck project, for example. So that's we can add value. And I think in terms of the sort of wellbeing aspects and social prescribing, that's another aspect we want to really make sure we're linking in with as well. So I think it's about collectively the partnership want to make sure we're drawing in all those benefits that are going to be derived from hopefully recovering nature across Norfolk.
Yeah, brilliant. And just turning to the business case, perhaps I'll throw this one towards Rob or maybe Jack as well, about if we are demonstrating water resource benefits, if we are improving kind of groundwater infiltration, allowing base flows to kind of be more healthy, to be able to kind of be more resilient to drought conditions, is there a way in which perhaps the Environment Agency might change their approach to abstraction licensing strategies on the back of those improvements being delivered? Who wants to go first? Rob, yeah.
Okay, well, I think that's a very tough question, and I think the timescales in terms of the abstraction licensing variations that are coming forward and having confidence that the modelled benefits translate at scale to low flow benefits and available resource is, those two things aren't really compatible. I think what I would say is that what we know is that even with abstraction license changes, we're going to see, under climate change, we're going to see some really heavy pressures on the water environment. And so as part of an overall adaptation strategy and reducing pressure on the water environment, I think groundwater infiltration and improving groundwater resources is a really positive thing to approach, but I think we have struggled, to be honest, to monetize those benefits, and that's one of the things that I think we really need to get to grips with, because I think everybody around the table can see there is a benefit, but how do we make that an investable proposition, and how does that, where do we go with that going forward?
Yeah.
But Jack, do you want to offer any technical, any other insights? You did all the hard work.
No, I don't think that was really me. I think maybe just good to point out the work that we did support, right? That did look at modelling the impacts on low flows and actually did a lot more complex work than I did around, okay, what happens if we deliver at scale nature-based solutions, and the result of which being, if we deliver the right things in the right places, there can be a significant benefit for low flows in certain catchments, especially those ones where the geology is right. And I guess good to say as well that WRE is continuing to support work along those lines, including monitoring and piloting runoff attenuation features for their water resources benefit. So that's definitely something that we're trying to forward as part of this program.
Yeah, that's a great link, because I was going to mention we've got 2 sets of trials now underway. So this is field trials to try and demonstrate the The models are in practice by building the runoff attenuation features first in the Wensum and closely followed by in the Upper Cam as well. So as part of a separate set of funding, supported by WWF, worked and also funding from the Environment Agency as well. We've got some of our Environment Agency colleagues on the call. So those field trials are really important to take the modelling into the real world to show that the benefits of these runoff attenuation features are real. Let's give everyone confidence they deliver the benefits that we expect. And even if the abstraction licenses don't change, you would still expect those benefits to follow through in terms of maybe hands-off flow conditions being achieved, those thresholds being achieved less frequently during spells of dry weather. But question for Thomas about unlocking housing development. Clearly, that was a very significant part of the overall business case. So we still have a net positive investment case for nature, even without thinking about unlocking housing development. Can you say a bit more about what that means, how you can value that?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Daniel. So that's a very interesting question. And for us, it's always been very important to assess the benefits of the portfolio with and without unlocking housing development, given the uncertainty around the nutrient neutrality regulation. So as you've seen in the slide and you can see in the report, we have tried to value, on the one hand, benefits for water quality, water quantity, climate regulation, and air pollution. And that in itself more than covers the cost of the program with a cost benefit of 1.4. But obviously, housing development and being able to unlock housing in a sustainable way brings a lot of benefits. And for that, we've used results from a publication that was done for the housing. I can't remember now. I'm sorry, Rob. Maybe you remember the name of that study. So we've used those numbers, and to avoid any oversell, we've discounted the value of one house unlocked heavily by 25%. So overall, a very interesting case, even without that. That was important for us to demonstrate it.
There's a question here from Carmen Loveday, which I'll ask you, Thomas, but then perhaps bring in Glenn as well, about what we've obviously talked about the income from biodiversity net gain. We talked about nutrient neutrality potentially being a funder for some of these projects. You've talked about the fact that you can't just scale those markets indefinitely. There will always be a kind of cap, a size of market that you'll be able to tap into, but not kind of exclusively and forevermore. So do you have a sense of where the other funding might come from? Is there a potential investor mix beyond those those markets which Glenn mentioned?
Yes, absolutely. So first, yeah, that's very right. There is a large opportunity in Norfolk. So those markets really represent a significant opportunity. And I'd like to start with that because it's been debated, and I think it's an important potential source of revenues. But if those do not materialize or are reduced, then obviously you will need to turn to other type of funders, and that's we've taken a look and done a detailed analysis of all the corporates that have potential interest in water security outcomes or biodiversity outcomes in the region, to engage them through their corporate social responsibility, also philanthropy grants. I guess this business case highlights the need to really find a sweet spot in blending private sector through environmental markets and the public sector, and also private sector, but through philanthropy or grants.
Yeah, and turning to you, Glenn, I mean, obviously on the back of the Wendling Beck project, as you develop the Crown Point Estate project, the Nature of Norfolk project, do you have a sense of what the kind of proportion of different income streams might be between philanthropy, BNG, nutrient neutrality, other kind of corporate investment?
I think it really varies by project. So the location and the underlying natural capital of each project is very different. And I think although the broad approach to these projects and that step change process is quite similar, I think the way that they go to market will really vary. And if you're close to an urban centre and high areas of growth and development, then BNG has got more opportunity, but as you say, the market is limited, and obviously you have to be in very specific locations for nutrient markets as well, within the area, but then also within the proximity to the development site as well. So they are limited markets, but I think there's more and more investment in nature finance. The tap isn't fully turned on yet, but we're kind of everything is gearing up, and everything we're hearing is pointing in that direction. So I think a lot of these corporate markets, in whatever regard, whether that's supply chain resilience, water security, or ESG or CSR type targets, will be a big part of that. And at the moment, the institutional investment is heavily aligned to carbon as well. So particularly peatland carbon, but also we've got salt marsh code coming through. There's opportunities around soil carbon as well. There's nuances around how agriculture may need to preserve some of that carbon for itself in the long term, but that mix, there is a value there, and we will start to see money start to flow over the next sort of 12 to 24 months, I think.
Yeah, brilliant. And there's a question from Archie Ruggles Bryce here about, given the North Water Fund is part of a kind of global portfolio that TNC and the Nature for Water Facility are developing, is there a means by which perhaps globally there might be conversations with investors at that level, or an appropriate mechanism to kind of deliver scale for investors? I think Lucy was talking about there are sometimes it's important to be investing at scale to offer a proposition that isn't in the kind of tens of thousands. Some investors won't get out of bed for millions, if not tens of millions of pounds. So how can we scale things up for Norfolk, but perhaps in the context of more of a kind of global approach to water funds? How should I, Rob, do you have any ambitions as kind of European watershed director in that direction?
Well, I think it's fair to say that we do already. The Nature Conservancy already does get approached by global players, so large corporates looking, who will have their priority watersheds across the world, and Lucy's nodding because WWF is in exactly the same business, and Norfolk is no different. So obviously Coca-Cola has invested already through WWF and the Norfolk Rivers Trust, we've had global corporates knocking on our door, not looking for investments in Norfolk, but looking for investments in other parts of the UK, and we've passed them on to the Rivers Trust, the local Rivers Trust, as trusted delivery partners. So absolutely, we have Norfolk in our sights, and our global fundraising team are talking about our work in Norfolk all the time. And what we would those conversations kind of shift from the philanthropic, and we're not sniffy about taking philanthropic money to prove a case and do brilliant things, but what we're really trying to test is the kind of core business case. And absolutely, talking to those conversations are happening. We haven't landed anything just yet, but yeah.
That's brilliant. It's very exciting. And just a last question. Let's say time has run away from us, but a last question for Ed. There's a question from Anthony Herford about having re-wiggled the stiff key, and you're re-wiggling rivers all over the place in Norfolk, which is really exciting. Do those wiggly channels stay fixed, or are you recreating kind of more of a dynamic landscape where 1 year to the next year you might end up with channels moving around the fields?
So in general, you want to put the river in a system where it can move, but our kind of lowland chalk streams aren't the most powerful of systems. So you're going to get changes, but they're not huge movements like we may get on other river systems. But we're always looking at kind of data and working very closely with academic organisations like Southampton University, who helped us on the stiff key to actually look at how big the meanders should be, where the river used to be, so to put it in as much of a natural system as we can, really, to get those wider benefits.
Yeah, but I think the most exciting thing for me is that there are now lots and lots of projects. People can go and visit. People can see what you've been able to do and achieve by introducing nature back into recreating natural processes. And I think it's open access, is it? The hill fort can be accessed by the public. You can see the landscape, the stiff key catchment unfold in front of you. It is absolutely fantastic. It's an absolutely brilliant scheme. It was superb just to visit there just the other week. But as I say, time has run away from us. We have to draw the webinar to a close, and to thank the audience. First of all, we had a fantastic response to the business case. Lots of people attending, almost 200 people at one point taking part in today's webinar. Of course, I want to thank all of our speakers and panelists for taking part today, particularly, of course, the Norfolk Water Strategy Programme team from the Nature Conservancy, from WRE, and the Nature Water Facility for preparing the business case and for presenting it so clearly today. And also the WRE team behind the scenes, Alice, Kirsty and Hannah as our new programme lead, for organising today's webinar, for making everything work and getting everything up and running. It's been brilliant. And so if you want to explore the Norfolk Water Fund in more detail, or the business case document is on WRE's website, together with a summary case, almost like a short prospectus version of the business case, which we hope to use with funders, with landowners to warm people up and get people excited. And if you want to get in touch about potential projects, as Hannah said, any particular projects, any delivery organisations want to talk to us about how we can work in partnership, potential funders as well. So please do email the team at nwsp@wre.org.uk. So that's nwsp@wre.org.uk. And just to remember that the recording of this event will be appearing on our website in the next couple of days, together with the slides. And please do feel free to share the website, the business case documents, the webinar recording amongst your networks, because it would be great to get the news out, get the discussion going, and of course, most importantly, getting the investment unlocked and the projects underway. So thank you again, everyone, for today's session. I look forward to working with you as we launch the Norfolk Water Fund, and thank you again for your interest in what we're up to. Thank you very much.